Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, kicking off spring practice Friday afternoon. Until it started with what I thought was a very insightful press conference from Dabo Swinney. And if there's one thing that as a Michigan fan, like I really appreciate from Dabo is he's going to be transparent about what's going on within this program. He's going to talk about the freshmen that are standing out. He's going to talk about some position changes that we're seeing. Well, like Jim Harbaugh used to get up there, and I listened to 30 minutes of an interview of him absolutely say nothing. Not talk about the players one time, not talk about the coaches one time. Dabo Swinney gave us a lot of information to go off of. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Clemson fans. We've talked a lot about this program in the middle of the winter, and the amount of support the Clemson fans have shown the boys has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. So fired up that spring ball is starting. Dill, I want to start with this. And this is kind of what we've been talking about a lot regarding this Clemson team. You talk about why I think we're both so high on Clemson going into 2025. It's the team chemistry. And Dabo Swinney noted that right off the rip. Look, quote unquote team chemistry 10 years ago, coaches would talk about it. I don't know how much it actually mattered because, the transfer portal wasn't a thing. You didn't have a revolving door with some of these programs gaining 30 players, losing 30 players. This is one of the things I love most about Clemson is all of these guys have played significant football with each other for the last 3 years. Dill, look at Ohio State last year. Or look at Michigan in 2023, especially the Ohio State team in 2024. I think the national media likes to talk about the transfer portal additions, the guys like Will Howard, the guys like Caleb Downs. The bulk of that Ohio State team was together for 3 to 4 years. That was their fourth year playing together. A lot of guys that skipped out on the NFL draft to come back to Ohio State one more year, won a national championship. Very similar story to Michigan in 2023. I mean, tell me guys like Antonio Williams or a guy like Tristan or a guy like Blake Miller, Cade Klubnik coming back, does that not feel like what we saw in Michigan in 2023, what we saw with Ohio State in 2024? Dabo Swinney noting that kind of fires me up going into 2025.
And that's the thing. Like Clemson's always kind of had that. That's probably been like one weapon I think they have over almost every other team in the country is like, again, there's like it just feels like a different program, like different level of buy-in. Like, yeah, they don't hit the portal particularly hard, but they don't get hit by the portal particularly hard.
I'll say something to cut you off. It's a program. There's not a lot of programs left, man. There's a lot of teams.
And honestly, like for the past 4 or 5 years, like they've been missing quarterback play hasn't been good enough until probably Cade Klubnik last year. And B, they haven't really had high-end skill on the offensive side of the ball. Everything else has worked really well. Again, I look at what this team is bringing back with Brian Wesco and TJ Moore emerging. Obviously, Antonio Williams played a really good season as well. And now they have top-tier quarterback play with Cade Klubnik. Again, you combine what they have in terms of like being a legitimate program that, again, keeps guys in the program, develops them up, plays really good football. Like they now have, though, the top end talent to go along with that culture that they've always
had. What I would say is they have that, they have the chemistry in the right spots too. Like if there were 2 spots where I would really like a lot of chemistry, offensive line, pass catchers, and quarterback. Well, guess what? The whole offensive line pretty much and all the pass catchers and quarterback, they're running it back in 2025. The other thing I would note is Dabo Swinney talked about how good and how strong he feels, especially with the new additions they've made to the front office with their evaluation and player development. There's a lot of people in the national media that are making a big stink about Clemson's recruiting class in 2025. I think it ranked 26 in the country. Okay, that's lower, and I think Clemson fans recognize you don't want to repeat that year after year after year. I think that's definitely notable. But what Dabo Swinney kind of said, or what he insinuated, at least the way I took it, was, look, we're not too worried about what our recruiting ranking is according to 24/7 Sports or On3 or whatever recruiting service you use. We trust our evaluation of players. Bill, you've seen that play out. Look on the defensive side of the football. I mean, yeah, they have the guys like a Peter Woods or TJ Parker, guys that were sought after, but they also have guys like Ashton Hampton or a guy like Shelton Lewis or Khalil Barnes that come in immediately and play high-level football. He noted that Clemson feels really good about their evaluations out of high school, and obviously the player development. That's another thing to know is that sometimes we get so wrapped up in the high school recruiting rankings that we forget, hey, how these programs see these high school kids might be different from how 24/7 Sports are on 3 does. And I think Clemson's got a little bit of a different way of doing things. And, there's been a lot of examples of it working. Second thing I want to note, though, the freshman standing out, this is probably what excites me the most here. Let's start with Gideon Davidson. I mean, how big is it? What Gideon Davidson? I mean, we knew he was a 10-7 guy coming out in the 100-meter coming out of high school. 40-inch vert. It's combine season. Go take a look at the running backs and what they're jumping. Gideon Davidson would be in the top 3 in this running back combine in his vertical as an early enrollee freshman. A lot more information that makes us more confident that he can step up for Clemson in the 2025 year.
And you talk about the positions they need freshmen to step up, and running back certainly leads the way because by the end of the year, you just were getting nothing from that spot. And Phil Maffa felt like he wore down. You didn't even really get probably the high-end play from him that you probably would have wanted.
You didn't get the high-end play when it mattered. Phil Maffa looked awesome in the month of September. I think the most frustrating part was you didn't have a ton of depth in that room. So you had to run Phil Maffa a lot throughout the season. And then as it got down to those money games, ACC championship, playing Texas in the playoffs, I mean, Phil Maffa couldn't even go against that. I had 2 carries. If Gideon Davidson can be that guy as a freshman, that's probably an answer to potentially the biggest question that we have for Clemson on the offensive side of the football. Would you? I mean, that's kind of what I would say. I mean, we were talking about questions we had. I don't know why we're getting silence from you over there because we talked about it all the time. Clemson's checking all these boxes, and the one position we're looking at is running back. And I think it's interesting that Adam Randall's going to stay at running back too. And we'll get to that because I want to note some other position changes. The other one, and this is how does this not fire you up if you're a Clemson fan? And the Clemson fans who've been rocking with the fellas, y'all know how I feel about Amari Adams. You know how I felt about Amari Adams for the last 6 months. Dill, this is what Dabo Swinney had to say about him. He reminds him of Brian Brazee coming out of high school, but just with more polish, and has the power of Dexter Lawrence. Does it get any better in terms of player comps, in terms of what Dabo Swinney just dropped on us, in terms of what Amari Adams looks like heading into spring practice?
I mean, he rattled out just about the best defensive tackles we've seen come through this Clemson team. Now, obviously, maybe a bit of hyperbole, but again, you talk about like the
Agreed.
positions that they really need. Again, they have 2 top-end guys. Like Peter Woods and Devontae Capehart, I think, might be the best defensive tackle tandem going into this season in 2025 in college football. But again, that's a position that even last year felt like it maybe wasn't quite deep enough or as deep as you would have wanted with guys who are making impacts. Because, like, again, Page, Williams, like I think you probably wanted a little bit more from those 2 guys, a little bit, especially as older guys. Like, but again, now you have Amari Adams, I should say, a guy who can come in and, again, when those 2 like rush the passer, hopefully a little bit better.
I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's crazy that we see a similar impact that Amari Adams has that we saw from Peter Woods as a freshman in 2023. I don't think that's crazy. In fact, that's probably what I'm projecting at this point going into 2025. And if you get that, along with the emergence of Stephylan Green and Dill, what if I just throw in Vic Burley? Hey, Vic Burley. What if Vic Burley puts it together in 2025? It kind of reminds you of the Clemson defensive line that we used to see when Clemson was on top of the sport. That's what you're looking for. Those were the 2 freshmen that we really projected to have an early impact in this 2020 from that 2025 class. It sounds like they're on track, which I think is huge. A couple of position changes. I want to go back to Adam Randall. Dill, I like this. We got 2 position changes to note. Adam Randall, I think a lot of us expected him to maybe stay at running back for 2 different reasons. One, where's he fit in the wide receiver rotation? Especially with Tyler Brown coming back, it's just a room that is going to be hard to play if you don't have the name of TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, or Antonio Williams. But you look at Adam Randall and say he's probably one of the best pure athletes on this football team. If you are a good football coach, and we talk about this all the time, you find ways to get your best football players on the field. Adam Randall, when healthy, is probably one of the better offensive weapons on this Clemson football team. Well, maybe we can't get you on the field that much at wide receiver, but you flashed a little bit at running back, and Dill, I'd be lying if I was like kind of intrigued in terms of what Adam Randall looks like throughout spring practice
Oh,
at the
when he
running
took
back
that
spot.
carry against Texas, that was like, yeah,
Electric.
I don't ever want to see him at wideout again. Just put him at running back because, like you said it, like there's just not really a spot for him right now in this wide receiver room. It's too good.
Yeah, and what kind of excites me is this is a wide receiver that you go what 6'3", 225. He's a little bit high waisted for running, but you don't see many 6'3" running backs out there. But if there was one guy that we pegged coming out of high school as a guy that can do a lot of different things, it's Adam Randall. What about him as a pass catcher out of the backfield? That has to fire you up. I mean, if you get him on linebackers coming out, well, what linebacker in the country is working against Adam Randall in coverage? So he's a guy that you can get creative, whether it's 15 plus carries a game for him, which I'd be surprised, but a guy that you know can carry the football, but could give you a ton of juice as a pass catcher out of the backfield. That kind of excites me. And then the other one, it kind of similar, Dill, is Minson Kelly, right? A guy that right here slotting in at the nickel. Kind of, I would guess, similar conversation where it's like, I don't know how we get you on the football field as a wide receiver. Let's give you a chance at nickel here. Clemson's a little bit thin in the back end. And so I don't hate it. And he's a guy that Dabo loves. I mean, Dabo spoke for like 5 minutes about him. And he was only in front of the media for like 40. He spent 5 minutes on Minson Kelly, a guy that we know they like. Hey, let's try to get him on the football field. Last thing, just a one unfortunate. This was the one really thing that was bad news, I guess you'd say, is that you go back to the offense side of the football. Elijah Thurman still recovering from that ankle injury. He's a guy that I really do think can press for a starting spot. And so Dabo said, hey, hopefully we can get him back for the back half of spring. That's going to be big for this kid because I think he's more than capable of playing and starting on this offensive line. And Dill, that's one of the last things we've been talking about is we know this offensive line is going to be good, right? Because we saw it last year. They pretty much return everybody. Can it be great? Can it be elite? Can it be a unit that is the strength of this team in 2025? I think it has the chance to be. In my opinion, that probably includes Elijah Thurman in the 5-man rotation.
Yeah, because there is still that part. Like, have you really seen Clemson dominate as an offensive line in the past couple of years? Probably not. Like, you've seen them play much better football. I think there's been a really nice progression of going from really weak units in the DJU days.
2023 was a
2023
was a disaster.
More consistent.
And then they got better in 2024.
But like, I think if I'm a Clemson fan, I'd want to see something more dominant. Like, again, where you see a game where like they play a legit big time team in like that offensive line, you can almost point to as part of a reason why they won the game, not just like a reason why they were losing. Because there was certainly a reason and a big reason why they were losing games. Hasn't really been the case the past couple of years, but they certainly, I don't feel like, have been the engine for this team. Again, it's a really experienced group. You have some guys with top end talent for sure. Yeah. I think you probably want to see a guy like Elijah Thurman make this team because, again, you look like top end ability to dominate. He kind of has that where like Walker Parks just doesn't, to be honest.
Yeah, that's the conversation I've had a little bit. Is I do think Elijah Thurman offers and it's not a shot at Walker Parks at all, but I think Elijah Thurman brings a higher ceiling than Walker Parks does. Braden Jacobs looks the part, by the way. I saw some clips. He's I don't think he'll play this year because Clemson's got their boxes checked at tackle. He's going to be a stud for Clemson. You kind of said something that's important. I think it's what's Clemson's goals here? It's not just an ACC championship. I think it's a legitimate national championship caliber year for Clemson. You noted the offensive line. Can we be great? Can we be an asset when we play a team like Texas? And can we run the football when we want to against great football teams? That's going to rely on, one, the running back position coming alive, but also the offensive line. We'll pause there. Plenty to talk about over the next couple of weeks and months. I'm just fired up to talk about really the first, Power 4 team that starts spring ball. Boys are fired up. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.